just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss right on the way. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the you can do anything.
Trump said in an initial statement that he apologized if anyone was offended, but that Bill Clinton has said far worse to him. Then came this video.
I've never said I'm a perfect person, nor pretended to be someone that I'm not. I've said and done things I regret, and the words released today on this more than a decade-old video are one of them. Anyone who knows me knows these words don't reflect who I am. I said it, I was wrong, and I apologize.
But many pundits describe the story as highly damaging.
I honestly feel like there's a pretty good chance we don't know who the Republican candidate is for president by the end of this weekend.
Will this kill his campaign?
I think this could be it.
Nobody's going to defend this. You can't defend. It is wrong. It is inappropriate. It is outrageous.
Joining us now to analyze the coverage of the Trump and Clinton stories, as well as tonight's big debate, Julie Roginski, Fox News contributor and a Democratic strategist. Tucker Carlson, the co-host of Fox and Friends Weekends and editor of The Daily Caller. And Heidi Presbella, senior political reporter at USA Today. Tucker, you have a nuclear explosion in the media over this, over a decade-old tape. Republicans bailing right and left. Now, look, the words are disturbing. Yeah. They're indefensible, but I was watching CNN and MSNBC. I mean, it's on hour after hour after hour. Is the news business overplaying this just a bit?
The words are indefensible. They're not inexplicable. And that's why the coverage is so misleading. I mean, nobody is actually shocked by this, and everyone's pretending to be. So just it's not
manufactured outrage?
It's entirely manufactured. It's totally ersatz. This was one of the recurring guests on the Howard Stern show. This is Donald Trump. So everyone knew that Trump is capable of this. Everyone who knows Trump knows he speaks like this in real life. Maybe not to this degree, but in the ballpark. And what bothers me is two things. One, the press has no moral standing to judge anyone who talks like this, having spent 25 years in newsrooms. Like, this is not, you know what I mean? Like, spare me the pearl clutching.
You've heard plenty of locker room talk.
I have. But the other point I would make is it's misleading to pretend that Trump is being abandoned by the Republican leadership because they're so outraged. John McCain is not pulling his support of Trump because he's so offended. This Navy veteran is so offended by this. He just doesn't agree with Trump on the issues. He thinks being connected to Trump hurts him politically. That's legitimate. I'm not attacking it, but that's a very different thing from saying he's so morally outraged he can't possibly be associated with this guy.
Julie Roginski, so Tucker is saying, hardly shocking. We've heard the old Howard Stern interviews, and so a lot of this is just whipped up from people in the media and politics who do not like Donald Trump.
Well, so I agree with Tucker on almost everything. The only difference here between locker room talk that maybe Tucker was privy to, I would hope, is that Donald Trump is not just talking about the size of somebody's breasts or all these things that he's talked about in Howard Stern. He's actually talking about sexual assault. He's talking about going up to women and grabbing them by their private parts in ways that I think most people would construe as an unwanted sexual assault. And so when it comes to that, that's where the line is drawn. Listen, I agree with Tucker 100%. John McCain's not bailing because, heavens to Betsy, all of a sudden we find that Donald Trump is vulgar. We've always known he was vulgar. They're bailing because of politics. But for a lot of women, this isn't about just the locker room talk. It's actually about the fact that this locker room talk constitutes something that people are familiar with as assault.
Well, let me just say, I'm not trying to minimize this in any way or defend it or anything like that or make excuses for it. I'm merely saying that it came from Donald Trump and everyone knew he was capable of this. That's the only point I'm saying.
Interesting, Julie, that you used the word private parts, because the P word, which we have believed, CNN just showed the tape and showed the P word, the S word, and a whole bunch of other words. New York Times printed it. So there's an interesting question. Heidi Presbella, so even if, people are out there saying, well, this is media bias, you don't like Donald Trump, I mean, you also have the explosive reaction to this old tape. Reince Priebus and Kellyanne Conway bowing out of the Sunday shows. Mike Pence not making a trip, saying he can't defend it. Trump's wife Melania saying this was offensive, but she accepts his apology. Hugh Hewitt and Bill Bennett, conservative commentators, saying he should drop out of the race. So in part, is the press now covering the reaction to this, even if it's an overreaction?
Absolutely. Granted, Tucker is absolutely right that a lot of these Republicans who are bailing have been critical of Trump all along, but a lot of them haven't. Like Bill Bennett, who had been out there essentially speaking, talking up Trump, like Deb Fischer in the Senate. There's really only one female GOP senator who hasn't called for him to step aside, which is Joni Ernst. So I'm hard pressed, and as are all of the political commentators, to come up with any kind of a historical precedent for what we've seen over the past 48 hours, not only just in terms of the lewd comments that are also, frankly, predatory in nature, but also just in terms of what we're seeing with this civil war erupting in the Republican Party, with Republicans down the ballot now as well panicking. And it is relevant and it is significant to play this up, because this comes at a time when it appeared, according to the polls, that Trump was really consolidating the GOP base for all of the rancor that had taken place throughout the primary.
Right.
He was consolidating.
Well, let me come back to you on this, Tucker, because a couple of Trump tweets, I'm going to rush through them really quickly. The media and the establishment want me out of this race so badly. He said he's not dropping out. He also told us the Washington Post and the Wall Street Journal. And then this new one, so many self-righteous hypocrites. My question is, you say there's a lot of hypocrisy in the news business. I would not give you an argument on that. Is there going to be a gap here between the public, which some of whom may not like this at all, and some of whom may think that this is just, Trump showing off with boys will be boys, and the pundits who are actually talking about whether he could be replaced as the Republican nominee?
I mean, look, I don't think anybody likes what Trump said. It's gross. I mean, it's disgusting. On the other hand, there could be a rubber band effect where the outrage is so phony and so overdone that some people say, knock it off. I dislike you more than I'm offended by Trump. But I would just say this. Here's the dishonesty, is that the people who are opposing Trump now have real reasons to oppose him, I think. They're totally legitimate, but they're pre-existing. I mean, the same people who are abandoning him now didn't want him to be the nominee. They're the same ones 6 months ago talking about taking it away from him at the convention. They have pre-existing reasons for opposing him. And that's fine, but we should just be honest about it.
Julie, let me read you some excerpts from the coverage. CNN politics editor said on the air, it's over for him. He's like some Central American dictator. Politico, no candidate has entered a debate so cloaked in disgrace. New York Times, this turned a boorish man into an outright predator. I have the impression, and also following reporters on Twitter, that there's a lot of glee in this, that a lot of people in the media who never liked Trump, who said he was never going to win the nomination, would kind of like the, quote, victory of seeing him pushed out of this race.
There's two things going on, and then I'll make a personal observation. One is Trump is a complete creation of the media. The media.
No, he's not.
He is. I'm sorry, Howard.
He got millions of Republicans votes. Will you get off that?
He did, because the media rode this horse all the way to the nomination. They covered his press conferences. They never broke to go to Ted Cruz's press conferences.
He gave more interviews than anyone in the history of television.
Excuse me. He didn't cover wall-to-wall press conferences for Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio or Jeb Bush. They did it for Trump because his ratings were good. And the ratings were good because he would say crazy stuff and people wanted to tune in. So that's one. Two, I will say to you that reporters love nothing better than to build somebody up and tear them down. And that's the fact. And I think to some extent you have a point there.
And that one I agree with you.
The third observation I will make is, as a woman, very quickly, we all know this guy. It may not be a big deal to some male reporters. Every woman out there knows this kind of guy. We've all encountered this kind of guy. I don't think there's going to be a rubber band effect among women because women know this guy. We've seen him, we've experienced him, and that's what women don't want to see in their president.
And Heidi, what about Billy Bush, who's now a co-host of the Today Show? He's seen playing along on this tape. He's apologized, says he's embarrassed and ashamed that he did play along. Is he going to take a hit in terms of his NBC career, or there are reports that NBC's not even planning to reprimand him?
Well, the charitable interpretation is just kind of an overeager sycophant who is kind of rooting Trump on. But the really damaging part is when they get off the bus and he knows what's been going on in the talk, and Donald Trump's kind of put the tic-tac in and kind of like pushes him onto this woman. So I think based on the reporting that I've seen, this could be a real problem, just given not just what happened, but also the demographic of the audience that the Today Show reaches, which is mostly women, and also the fact that this could make a lot of his female co-workers as well uncomfortable. And who knows, I guess we'll find out on Monday when he was supposed to be co-hosting again what actually happens. A lot of times in these cases, when something like this happens, the host or the personality will go into a hibernation period. But I guess we'll find out on Monday.
Right. What's interesting is that Megyn Kelly, who just criticized both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, said on her show, Donald Trump, with all due respect to my friend, at 10 o'clock will go on Hannity, pretty much only Hannity, and will not venture out to the unsafe spaces these days, which doesn't expand the tape. And Hannity tweeted back, you should be mad at Hillary Clinton. Clearly you support her. They've since made up. They sent out a picture. But Trump is pretty much staying off of any non-Fox outlet. But Tucker, I know some people out there, and I see some of this online, are saying, well, What Donald Trump said is just talk, but Bill Clinton, he actually had affairs, including with an intern in the White House. There's an allegation of rape. Are the media going to buy into that argument?
No, well, they hate Trump. Of course they're not going to buy into that argument. Is it a legitimate argument? I don't know. I mean, I think he's, as a political matter, better served by talking about what he believes and what he's going to do for the country. But, I mean, I do think it's worth preserving this distinction because it's a real, meaningful one and a legal one. There is a difference between talking and doing. There is. If I say, you know, I don't like you, that's different from hitting you in the face. And so I'm not defending anything that Trump said, and I didn't like it. I've got 3 girls. I don't like that stuff.
Yeah.
But to call it assault is like to devalue assault, because it was an assault. It was something different. It was. It's not the same as physically attacking someone talking about it. It's just not.
Julie, brief response.
Brief response is that he's actually talked about having done this, not just talk. He's boasted about it.
Yeah, okay.
And that's a big difference. I mean,
no, but okay, then we can call what he did assault. You can give me the specific time that he did it, and then I'll say that's assault.
Well, wait a second. He's boasting about this. Now you don't want me to take him at his word on this particular issue. He said he's done it. Now we're saying he's a liar.
I'm not defending the guy.
So look,
don't devalue the word assault.
I'm not devaluing it, but I'm telling you, if somebody comes up to me and says, I'm going to grab you by the you-know-what, that to me, without my consent, or kiss me without my consent, that to me is the definition of assault. It is.
We'll just be shaking hands at the end of this segment.
You can give me a hug anytime.
Julie, let us know what you think. MediaBuzz@foxnews.com. When we come back, boy, this is going to be some debate tonight. The leaked documents against Hillary Clinton, these have practically been blown off the screen by the Trump saga. And later, the reporter who got hold of the Trump and Billy Bush tape gives us the backstory. Hillary Clinton will undoubtedly face a new line of questioning at tonight's debate here in St. Louis about her highly lucrative Wall Street speeches, parts of which were made public in hacked emails obtained by WikiLeaks. While running to the left against Bernie Sanders, she had said in these speeches that she favored, quote, open trade and open borders, a stunning contradiction with her public position. She also called Sanders' supporters a bucket of losers. And despite her tough on big banks rhetoric, Clinton said this in one speech: Wall Street insiders are what is needed to fix Wall Street. Clinton's spokesman said the, quote, stolen documents could have been orchestrated by Russian officials trying to help Donald Trump, but would not say they were fake. Tucker Carlson. The media treating this also as a bombshell, or kind of just an interesting look at routine political
I don't think they're
posturing?
treating it at all. I mean, and this goes to one of the most frustrating pieces of this whole debate, or non-debate, is the lack of attention to the actual issues, including from Trump. I mean, like, what would it mean to carry through on his trade policy? What would it mean, for example, to have open borders? I mean, what Hillary Clinton, in the last 2 weeks, we've discovered that Obamacare's basically collapsed. No one's denying it. Bill Clinton has affirmed that twice in public. Hillary Clinton is calling for extending Obamacare benefits to illegal immigrants in this country, over 10 million.
And
what would that mean?
The media's interest in these subjects?
I haven't read a single story on that. That's a big deal story. Like, where are the write-ups?
Julie Roginski, quote, open borders, that's a radioactive phrase, and it seems to contradict just about everything Clinton has said on trade and immigration.
Look, I am not going to defend these speeches. I haven't defended them from day one. If she was even contemplating running for president, which I think we all know she was, to go out there as soon as she left Secretary of State, to go out there and start doing these speeches was completely incomprehensible
and
to me.
And to suck up to Wall Street
and to suck up to Wall Street and do all. Yes,
yeah.
Exactly right. She didn't need the money. She didn't need to suck up to Wall Street. She was going to get their support, and she did not need the money. Let me stress again. So I'm not defending that. Having said that, the difference here is it's sort of what you expect of politicians. It's not as salacious as the Trump tapes. And in her defense, not her defense, but in her luck, and it's really dumb luck in this case, this tape got leaked the same time as her WikiLeaks stuff got leaked. The news cycle will go up with Trump up until tonight's debate, and then starting tomorrow, the news cycle will pick up where the debate left off. This is getting lost in the news cycle. She has dodged a bullet on these speeches.
And then you've set up my question to Heidi Presbella, which is on any other day. I mean, these John Podesta emails describing the Wall Street speeches would have been the lead story everywhere. Is it simply not just that it's being overshadowed by the Trump saga, but they're not salacious, as Julie says? And is that the media standard for whether we cover something intensively?
I think they're plenty interesting enough. There is a lot in there. This has been some of the most sought after information in this cycle about Hillary Clinton ever since the primaries, when Bernie was hammering her to release these speeches. But the timing, to Julie's point, the timing of it was so fortuitous for her that I literally thought it was a joke. When I saw it come across on Twitter that they were dropping WikiLeaks, I thought this is a joke. And then I realized, that it wasn't. This is essentially the campaign's own audit of some of the worst stuff that she could have said in these speeches. And I think, a lot of it has to do with the way the networks replay this because the papers did give a really full write-up, to the extent that I saw Hillary Clinton surrogates accusing the New York Times of writing a smear article. But the way the networks operate, the GOP is in crisis right now, and they don't have their surrogates out there pushing this as well, because everybody's playing defense on this Trump story. So I think it's a confluence of things, but very much it's completely due to the timing.
Right, you don't have Democrats running away from Hillary Clinton over this story the way you do have many big-name Republicans, at least publicly, distancing themselves from Donald Trump. But Tucker, you could do separate stories just on Hillary Clinton saying only Wall Street insiders can fix Wall Street. This, after all, the outrage at the banks in the wake of the fiscal crisis.
Or you could do 11 stories on how Billy Bush may be culpable for American sexism. I mean, the overkill on the Trump Access Hollywood story, I guess, left a shortage of journalists to write actual stories about actual policies. Look, and by the way, I don't think that the New York Times or any news organization ought to need prodding from partisans in order to cover a story.
Yeah, it's either news or it's not.
I mean, you make a completely fair point about the lack of surrogates, for sure. But that shouldn't affect our business. We should just be, an editor should say, well, what is this? Why don't you go write a story on it? But no one did.
And for months and months, Julie, the press was very hot on the $675,000 from Goldman Sachs, to take just one example. Hillary Clinton was paid, the failure to release her speeches, the refusal. That ardor seems to have cooled in the general election. So I'm sure some critics out there are saying, sure, now you're giving Hillary Clinton the pass because she's close to winning the White House and Donald Trump's in trouble.
I don't know if the ardor has cooled. I think, again, it goes back to ratings. This is why I keep saying Trump is helped by the ratings. Now he's being hurt by the ratings. He's somebody who attracts so much attention because he's so salacious. And what he says, that especially cable news, including all of us, unfortunately, are like lemmings that go with him. And it's left for other people to sit there wading through boring Wall Street speeches. It's not as sexy. It's not to most people as talking about what Billy Bush and he talked about. He lived by the sword. He's now dying by the sword to some extent.
There's also the question of WikiLeaks and the role of Russian hackers that I think really troubles me. But of course, we all now pounce on these stories. All right, Tucker Carlson, Heidi Presbella. We'll see you a bit later. Julie Roginski, thanks for joining us. Ahead, Martha McCallum on how the latest Trump and Clinton disclosures create new challenges for tonight's moderators, Anderson Cooper and Martha Raddatz. But first, the Hillary interview where the questions were scripted, I mean really scripted, in advance. Now comes some ammunition for people who suspect that media outlets give politicians the questions in advance, which would be a huge ethical breach in any interview. In the case of Chicago television and radio host Steve Harvey and Hillary Clinton, it was true. In cringeworthy fashion, Clinton aides detailed Harvey's planned questions last February, along with proposed answers, in a memo obtained by the Washington Free Beacon. There were even pre-selected photos of Clinton as a female trailblazer to share with the audience.
Let's go to the Yale Law School. Billy boy.
So I met my husband in law school.
According to the memo, a grandmother in the audience would seek suggestions on what to do with her grandkids, and Hillary would talk about singing Wheels on the Bus to her granddaughter Charlotte. And then this penetrating query: deep dish or thin crust pizza? Another tough one. What did Clinton learn from her last campaign? Question: how would she bridge the racial divide? Answer: Hillary has been fighting these battles for decades.
Race is such a hot button issue in America these days. How would you better bridge the racial divides as you see it?
Well, I want to thank you for raising it, kind of helping people to think about it. Because, look, there can be no doubt we still face systemic racism.
It was all in the memo. What's the role of faith in your life and campaign? Answer: Clinton would talk about being raised a Methodist. The campaign even suggested questions for Hillary to ask women in the audience before a final Q&A on the problems in Flint, Michigan. There were TV sitcoms less scripted than this. Spokesman for Steve Harvey tried to portray this as a routine pre-interview to help the guests feel prepared, I'll say. But come on, Steve Harvey endorsed Clinton a week later. Oh, and how about this? Check out this question to Clinton at a Pennsylvania town hall meeting from 15-year-old Brennan Leach.
At my school, body image is a really big issue for girls my age. I see with my own eyes the damage Donald Trump does when he talks about women and how they look.
Well, the New York Times reported that Brennan had said her dad, a local politician, helped her with the question. But the paper didn't take the next step, which Mediaite did. The father, Dalen Lynch, is a Democratic state senator and big Hillary supporter. He now claims it was a spontaneous question. And here's the kicker. According to a hacked email, a producer for MSNBC host Chris Hayes wrote to the Clinton campaign last year, pitching a segment looking back at the 90s scandals faced by the Clintons, saying the show wanted to, quote, talk about this amazing, intelligent woman who probably faced more nonsense back in the day because she is a woman. Now that is amazing. Coming up, how badly did CBS's Elaine Quijano get run over in that vice presidential debate? Martha McCallum on that and more. She's on deck. As we count down to the big debate, joining me now here at Washington University in St. Louis is Martha McCallum, the co-host of America's Newsroom, who moderated some of the presidential primary debates. And Martha, this Donald Trump videotape story has exploded like a neutron bomb. Some Republicans calling him to drop out. I don't see that happening. Do you have a sense that some folks in the media are kind of cheering this on, kind of enjoying this twist and watching the setback for the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, you have to ask yourself about the coverage of this issue and how important this moment really is in terms of measuring a presidency. However, as you and I well know, we live in a world where people sort of want to digest scandalous material at a level that is really unprecedented. And the desire to dig deeper into policy is not always there. But Donald Trump is such a unique candidate. You know, he's obviously a businessman who came up through the ranks and built a real estate empire, but he's also a reality TV show star. So from the very beginning, this has been digested by the media and I think by the public at a level and in a way that is just not like anything we've seen in terms of typical political editorial digestion. So it is a completely unique situation, and this, unfortunately for him, it feeds right into the worst nightmare of the way he treats women and talks about women, and women have been the problem for him electorally since day one. So the group that he should have been building traction with and building reputation with over the past 4 or 5 months in particular, and he made some ground there, he is sliding down that hill quickly, and it's going to be very difficult for him to repair tonight, but that's the job that's set before him, Howie.
Right, yeah, white hot focus on that and relatively little focus on the WikiLeaks stump on Hillary Clinton. But let me ask you this, because we've got the debate coming up. Anderson Cooper, CNN, one of the moderators, ABC's Martha Raddatz, the other. CNN just now reporting that both moderators will make the Trump videotape, Access Hollywood, talking about groping women, the focus of the opening set of questions. Does that seem right to you? And is there any danger that it will end up overshadowing the economy and taxes and terrorism and other issues that Americans obviously care about?
Yeah. Of course there's a danger of that. And it's going to be up to Donald Trump to, sort of answer that question in the way that he has designed and decided to answer that question, and to then move on to the issues that got him through an incredibly roller coaster, tumultuous primary where he vanquished 16 other candidates out there. So he's got to figure out how he's going to deal with this question. And in a way, Howie, it's probably better for him if it does come right off the top. Hillary Clinton is also going to have to answer to these WikiLeaks stories that have come out about her public versus private persona, and they better press her on that as well. I mean, they are going to have to be seen as coming at these candidates fairly. I really question why the Trump campaign did not put Donald Trump out there last night, why he didn't do a sit-down interview with a sort of neutral party to talk about his life, to talk about the way he sees things, to express his apology to women that he offended with this. He could have gotten this story a little bit behind him in a well-crafted appearance last night. And I really think that that's going to be one of the questions that continues to dog him. Why didn't they do that last night?
Instead, it all comes down to tonight, and I predict that the viewership will be at least as high, if not higher, than the first debate. Let's take a brief look back at the VP debate, Tim Kaine and Mike Pence, because CBS's Elaine Quijano, a little less experienced at this, was the moderator. Here's some of what happened with her in the moderator chair.
You can't meet the Nixon standard.
The people at home cannot understand either one of you when you speak over each other. I would please ask you to wait until it is that the other is finished.
I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. I saw the clouds of smoke rise from the Pentagon.
I was in Virginia, where the Pentagon's.
I know you were. We all lived through that day as a nation. It was
because the FBI did an investigation.
Gentlemen.
And they concluded that there was no reasonable prosecutor who would take it further.
Senator Kaine, Governor Pence, please.
There was so much crosstalk in Farmville, Virginia. It was hard to hear. Got about a minute. Did Lady Kahano lose control of that debate? And is there any danger of that happening tonight in St. Louis?
Yeah, I think she did a little bit. I think both of those guys came in, sort of loaded for bear and ready to jump in on each other. Tim Kaine said that even his wife told him he interrupted too many times. I think it was like 72 times or something. And I don't think it really reflected well on him. But I do not expect that to happen tonight. I don't think Anderson Cooper or Martha Raddatz, who I ran into briefly this morning and asked her how she felt about tonight, she said, sure, I'm nervous. If you're not nervous, you're not going to be on your A game. And I don't think either one of them would put up with the kind of thing that we saw at the VP debate.
I'm with you on that. And, of course, everybody a little nervous before such a big event. Excuse me. Martha McCallum, great to see you.
We get confused all the time.
Marthas today.
Thanks, Howie. We'll see you later on our show. Looking forward to it.
Same here. Coming up, the Washington Post reporter who broke the Trump story on how he got that tape from an anonymous source. And later, Frank Luntz on how this and the WikiLeaks dump on Hillary Clinton is changing the coverage of this campaign. The crisis in Donald Trump's campaign was triggered by an exclusive from one newspaper reporter. And joining us now from Washington is David Farenholt, a reporter for the Washington Post. David, you can't reveal the unnamed source who led you to this footage of Donald Trump and Billy Bush a decade ago, of course. But is it fair to say the person wanted to damage Trump's candidacy?
I can't really say anything about the source, and I don't think I really even know. So no, I can't really address that question.
You're saying you don't know the source's motivation? Because sometimes newspapers try to at least describe the motivation of somebody who brings in information but doesn't want to be named.
In this case, we haven't. We haven't really said anything at all about the source. So, yeah, I can't really say more than nothing.
Okay. Can you even say whether somebody wanted this out quickly? Because after all, Access Hollywood had this in the archives, could have dug this up anytime in the past year. And when you called Access Hollywood for comment, you had to figure, you might be in a race to break this story.
That's right. We knew that was the risk. We called NBC and Billy Bush's folks around noon to 1 on Friday and knew, that was the risk. Obviously this footage was theirs originally, so there was a risk that they would get there before us. But, we had to take that risk. We wanted to call them and make sure that the tape was authentic, that there was no concern that we were being hoaxed.
Any hesitation at all in disclosing what was obviously meant to be a private conversation?
No hesitation about that at all. We're talking about guys running for president of the United States wearing a microphone. If this had been somehow, a secret bug put in his office in Trump Tower or something like that, maybe you'd have a different, wonder of whether he knew he was being mic'd. But he certainly was wearing a microphone. You could see that later in the tape. So no compunction about that at all.
Yes, wearing a microphone, that is a perfectly valid point. Early on the show, we talked about, a lot of past raunchy talk involving Donald Stern, particularly on those Howard Stern interviews, has been out there. Did you anticipate when you saw this that this would create the crisis and the explosion that it has for Donald Trump? Did it seem to you to be sufficiently different from what we have already known about the Trump persona?
Well, no, I don't think I would have predicted it would have caused this level of crisis, but I've been wrong basically about every political prediction I've made along the way. I spent 3 weeks writing a long profile of Bobby Jindal last year, so I don't think my instincts should be trusted at all. But what's different about this tape, though, is that, it's not public. That's the interesting thing here, is that Howard Stern, all the things that Trump said on Howard Stern, he says in public, and there's sort of a sense that if you said it in public, it can't be that bad. And also Trump had said, well, when I talk in public, I'm playing a character. I'm doing it for entertainment. This obviously is not a public statement. And also, as one of your earlier guests said, he's not just sort of rating a woman or commenting on a woman's attractiveness. He's describing his own behavior, whether truthfully or not, I don't know. But he's saying, this is what I did, this is what I do. And I think that's what makes it worse.
Now, you have broken most of the stories about the finances of the Trump Foundation, leading New York's Attorney General, who's a Democrat and a big Hillary supporter, to recently bring a halt, temporary halt at least, to the foundation's fundraising. The campaign, not that long ago, described you as a biased reporter who is clearly intent on distracting attention away from the corrupt Clinton Foundation. What was your reaction to being attacked that way, and does something like that make you kind of try to redouble your efforts?
Well, that's life in the big city. You know, you cover a presidential campaign, there's going to be questions about your motives and about why you're focusing on one candidate versus another. In the case of Trump, this is a guy, as I said, who's running for president. When you do that, you open yourself up to scrutiny. And the questions about the Trump Foundation, and it's particularly the particular failure that led to this order from A.G. Schneiderman. This is not something that Schneiderman found and brought to me. It's something that I found. It was pointed out to me by a law professor I called while working on another story about the Trump Foundation. It's literally the easiest thing that Trump could have done to make sure it's a paperwork error. It's not something that required a lot of sleuthing. Once you knew the law, it was easy to see that Trump should have done this and in fact did not.
All right, I've got just a couple of seconds, but you do all this digging on the Trump Foundation, and now the story you'll probably always be known for involves Access Hollywood. Yeah, a bus and an interview on Access Hollywood. I would never have predicted that after I spent all those weeks learning the ins and outs of tax law. All right. David Farrell, thanks very much for joining us in Washington. Thank you. And let's bring back Tucker Carlson and Heidi Presbella. Heidi, does the way in which the tape became public, does it matter? Does it affect the impact here?
Okay.
Let's say the source hated
At this point, I
Donald
think
Trump.
there clearly was some media strategizing around when this was released, because it wasn't until the decision was apparently made at NBC, or that it became clear that it wouldn't be released until Monday after the debate, that someone took it upon themselves to decide that that wasn't good enough and that it should be released on Friday before the debate to kind of set up this big forum.
Yeah, I couldn't get Farrell to shed any light on that, but clearly somebody didn't want to wait till Monday, and because otherwise Access Hollywood would have reported it after the weekend. But Tucker, Access Hollywood is part of the huge NBC corporate family. So this has been sitting in the archives for more than a year, and yet NBC never thought to go after it to find out, whether there were any outtakes that might be interesting. What does that say about it?
It's been there 11 years, of course, and apparently they found within the last year, right, since he's been running. Yeah. Right. I mean, look, someone shafted Billy Bush from within inside the company he works for, which is the other question. So I would like to do the network morning show anchor challenge, where we attach microphones to all of them when they don't know they're being recorded, and kind of see what we find. Do you know what I mean? So, like, let's not get too self-righteous here. I would have run this in a second if someone sent it to me, so I'm not attacking the Washington Post for running it, of course. But there are ethical questions around it. Let's not pretend that there aren't. It's silly to pretend there aren't. He's wearing a mic, yeah, but he didn't think he was being recorded. Right. I have a mic on my iPhone. If we're sitting talking and I'm recording you and you don't know, is it, oh, you knew I had an iPhone? I mean, I'm around mics all the time, and there are moments when you think you're in a private sphere, and maybe that you misjudged it, but someone has told you you're not on camera, and so we're talking normally. Then you're on camera, you talk differently. That's legitimate. We all have different selves, the one that we project publicly, and the one we reserve for people we're speaking privately with. I mean, come on.
And yet, Heidi, in the half minute that we have, we live now in an age of hacked emails, and just all these private correspondence, comments seem to come out. It seems to be part of the terrain of running for president.
Absolutely.
For both candidates.
And I think that's why it's shocking that this actually didn't come out until now, especially in the course of the primary. I think we were all waiting for his primary opponents to bring stuff like this out, because we all have known that the Stern tapes are there for public consumption, for instance, and now there may be more coming out. So it's really poor timing for Trump.
All right. We'll see tonight. Heidi Presbella, Tucker Carlson, great to see you guys here in St. Louis. Next on Media Buzz, Frank Luntz on how the new Trump and Clinton bombshells are changing the media climate and perhaps public opinion. When it comes to the fireworks we now expect at tonight's debate here in St. Louis, we turn to someone who's studied these things quite intensively. Frank Luntz, Republican pollster and Fox News contributor. And Frank, this Donald Trump tape is very vulgar and very damaging. I don't think there's any debate about that. But does the tsunami of media stories, the endless replaying and reposting of the tape, does that amplify the impact on Donald Trump?
It does, but this is what everyone is talking about, that if you take a look at Twitter, if you look at Facebook, Google, Instagram. Everyone is talking about this presidential campaign. It's the most talked about campaign that I've been around since 1992. And what makes this one significant is that even people who don't care about politics, who would normally turn this stuff off with just 1 month to go, they're all paying attention. There's a reason why that first presidential debate was record-setting. There's a reason why this morning, Sunday morning, you can wake up at 7 a.m. and it is filled with this conversation. It's because people want to know what Donald Trump is going to say next.
So it would be a mistake, therefore, to look at this purely in terms of political analysis. I mean, I had my questions here to ask you, does this affect him more with women or with all voters? What you're saying is this is a cultural event. Everyone is talking about it around the proverbial water cooler. It is everywhere online, and therefore the interest, even is just huge, whether you ordinarily tune in to politics heavily or not.
You can't get away from it, and people don't want to get away from it. It's why Fox News is having its all-time record ratings. And frankly, the competition is also up. You're picking it up on talk radio, you're picking it up in newspapers, and the problem is that they're not asking about substance. And Howard, I really do think this is an issue, that no one is asking which one is better able to handle a nuclear war, which one is better able to balance the budget. It's all about their persona, it's about their character traits. And that's good up to a point. But the American people need to be talking about the issues, and nobody is right now. The candidates aren't, the media isn't, the pundits aren't, nobody is.
Do you think the reason that the media are shying away, I mean, over the course of the campaign, obviously, we've talked a bit about the economy and taxes and terrorism, but the media is shying away because this other stuff, the juicy stuff, the talk of sex tapes, the talk of Miss Universe, all of that, it is like catnip and is so much more fun to cover and is easier to cover and delivers better ratings and more clicks. And if so, what does that say about the news business?
But what does that say about America? When you ask the question, would you rather see where they stand on issues, or would you rather see a Donald Trump sex tape? By 2 to 1, they're going to choose the Donald Trump sex tape. We've been finding this out for the last couple of months. It's genuinely upsetting for those of us who care about the future of the country. And I got to tell you, this is an impossible campaign for someone like me to cover, because nobody, not only are they not talking about the issues, they don't even know what the issues are. Social Security, education, things that are affecting us right now or over the next generation, and instead we're discussing the P word. And by the way, watching Saturday Night Live, and this is something that I also find significant, for the first time ever, just about every one of George Carlin's words that you can't say on television, you can now say, thank you, Donald Trump, thank you, media. That's where we've come, and it's a disgrace.
I've got about half a minute, so rather than just pile on the journalists and the pundits and the news organizations as, chasing the cotton candy and ignoring the substance, what I'm hearing from you is this is a reflection of the country, that we are a mirror to a country that is increasingly amusing itself to death.
There is a battle between William F. Buckley and that type and the PBS crowd, and the Jerry Springer and that crowd. And unfortunately, Howard, the Jerry Springer crowd won. And we're never going to be able to go back. The thing that I tell every viewer, once you step over that line of civility and indecency, once you start to use language that you might use in a bar rather than in a presidential debate, you never go back. I think it's a poison. I think it's toxic. And the country's going to suffer.
Got it. Frank Luntz, thanks very much for your insights. Appreciate it. Still to come, some final thoughts from St. Louis on the media's handling of the Trump bombshell and the big debate, now just 9 hours away.
And I would like to take this time to formally apologize.
What are you saying?
I deeply apologize.
Are you trying to say apologize?
No, I would never do that. What I am doing is apologizing to all the people who were offended by my statements, but more importantly, to the people who were turned on by them.
Alec Baldwin back in action on SNL. This has been the most remarkable 36 hours and the most remarkable campaign any of us has ever covered. After the incredible media battering that Donald Trump has taken, it's simply stunning that old outtakes from Access Hollywood has many top Republicans bailing on their nominee. Though it's true he never ran as a choir boy, Trump's words about women were disturbing, indefensible. But what's also disturbing is the sense of glee that I see among some of the reporters and pundits who cover him, especially on Twitter, as if this justifies their hostility toward Trump, as well as the downplaying of a major document dump involving Hillary Clinton. Whatever happens to Trump in this campaign, the media's reputation for fairness has definitely suffered some damage. That's it for this special edition of Media Buzz from St. Louis. I'm Howard Kurtz. Write to us, MediaBuzz@foxnews.com. We hope you'll like our Facebook page where we post a lot of original content. Let me know what you think on Twitter @Howard Kurtz. And also, I'll be on here after the debate. You can watch the Fox News coverage tonight and check me out with Megyn Kelly.